right. Welcome to another episode of the 49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast. He's Brian. He's Al. I'm Zain. And it's a victory podcast, our first victory podcast of this season. Those are always great, except this one feels like a loss. There's one thing on everybody's mind right now, and that is the health of this guy right here. And guys, it was one of those things where when Jimmy got hurt in 2018, the ACL, it felt similar, but it was different because the roster was not right. Right. It was not a Super Bowl caliber roster. They were still rebuilding. And at that point, we didn't know what they would be. This was an extra gut punch because Trey was supposed to be the guy that got us over the hump, that was able to guide the team to different heights and new levels. And all of the expectations and all the anticipation and all of that stuff kind of just poof in one moment, just gone. And if you've been living under a rock for the last 24 hours, Trey Lance is out for the season. He's got a severe ankle injury. He had surgery around it today, and all signs point to being a full recovery for him. But he's going to be out for the entire season, and we hope that he'll be back for training camp. All indications that are he will be back for training camp. But there's so much to unpack here with regards to what happened, his experience, and the time off that he's going to miss, and what the team's going to do. And we're going to do all that for you in this recap show. So, guys, I'm going to open it up to you. And I mean, what are your thoughts?
I guess, when you see that happen, there was a lot of emotions last night for sure. I think anger was the first one for me. Here we go again type thing. And listen, there's been a lot of back and forth on this. I'm sure some people feel different ways. For me, the way I feel, and it's just me, people can feel whatever they want to. I said it to you last week, Brian. I was like, he's going to get hurt. I said it right on the show. The way they're using him, the way he's running, he's going to get hurt. And he got hurt. And look, what they did with him, he's had 4 starts now. He had 16 rushes against the Cardinals. He had 8 rushes against the Texans. He had 13 rushes last week against the Bears, and he had 3 this week. And he was on his way to 10, 12 plus again. Now, people say, well, Lamar does it. Well, Josh Allen does it. Well, Lance isn't that kind of runner. Lance is sort of stumbles and just kind of falls forward into these collisions. He's not a smooth runner like Jackson. Allen will take hits, but even Allen avoids a lot of hits too. Like Lance seeks contact, and that is not sustainable. And we've seen in 4 starts now, he's been hurt twice. He hurt his knee in his first start, and he was out for a while. And now he's out for the season after hurting his ankle. I wouldn't say blame anyone, but do I agree with Kyle Shanahan's play calling? I do not. And you want to say, well, Al, he got hurt on a read option. Okay. Still, the more you get hit, the more chance there is to get hurt. I don't care what the play was. He's still running 10, 15 times a game. So I have not agreed with the play calling. They use him like a bulldozer. They've changed the rules in the NFL to protect quarterbacks. And the teams don't want their quarterbacks getting hit. And this quarterback is getting hit constantly. So, yeah, I have an issue with that. And you know what? Some of it's on Trey, too. Slide, man. He's been playing reckless. So people want to blame Kyle. Same thing with Lance. Lance did not do much to protect himself either. So Kyle called plays that didn't necessarily protect him, and Lance didn't really protect himself either. And if you say, well, he wasn't ready as a passer or this, that, and the other thing, then why the hell is he in there? If you don't trust him enough to throw the football and you're going to just run him in, we're just going to run him in the line of scrimmage. What are we doing? Like, what are we doing? So it's really, really frustrating. Again, the emotions, it's anger, it's frustration. And look, we'll get into it more, but the Niners are going to probably be fine. They're going to probably win 10, 11 games. This is still fine. But are they a better team right now? Maybe with Jimmy, possibly. But will they be better in January? Will they be better in 2023? Because that's what the quarterback move was for, to take them above where they've been. And it would have taken some time to do that, but that was the goal. And now, we're kind of back where they were last year, which is fine. But it's still frustrating that it happened the way it did.
Yeah. Kyle talked about, that part of what makes Trey Lance effective right now is his running. And I get that. And I don't begrudge him running him. What I begrudge is the lack of development for a quarterback to play from the pocket. And the reason that Trey Lance wasn't ready is because what Trey Lance needs more than anything is reps. And that's what's frustrating to me is last season, was Trey Lance ready last season? Absolutely not. I'm not trying to claim that he was, Did the 49ers make it to the NFC Championship game? Yes, they did. Did they win that game? No, they did not. Okay. So now you've taken an entire season where you could have gotten this kid reps. Were they going to be successful if they played Trey Lance early? No, I'm not claiming that they would have been. But what they would have been is better set up for this season and beyond to see what they have in this quarterback that they spent 3 first-round draft picks on. See, here's the thing that frustrates me. It's not that they drafted Trey Lance. It's not that they kept Jimmy Garoppolo. None of it. Here's what frustrates me. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. You cannot draft an inexperienced quarterback that needs reps on reps on reps to grow and then not give them to him. And you cannot tell me that the reps that he gets as scout team quarterback, where he is emulating the other team's quarterback, not running your plays that you want him to run, but running other teams' plays to get the defense ready, is going to help him develop. It's not. It's not. I don't care what you tell me. It's not. It's not going to help him develop in your offense. So you keep saying, hey, and fans, right? Hey, we're in a Super Bowl window. We need to compete now. You're the one that decided to draft a quarterback. That was your decision. That wasn't Trey Lance's decision. That wasn't the fans' decision. That was your decision. You decided to draft a quarterback. And then on top of that, you decided to draft a quarterback who had very little experience in college. So are you going to tell me that you drafted him and then you're not going to give him the reps he needs to develop? That's frustrating to me. Is the team better now? Sure. Jimmy Garoppolo right now is a better quarterback than Trey Lance. But the problem is we know what we have in Jimmy Garoppolo. So now you went from a low floor, high ceiling season to a high floor, low ceiling season. That doesn't excite me. I have zero expectation that this team is going to win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. Why? Because they've been to one and they lost it. And then they went to an NFC Championship game and they lost that as well. Why? Because Jimmy Garoppolo is an awful quarterback in the playoffs. Period. You can't tell me that he's good. He's not. He's played 6 games. He has a 60% completion percentage. He has 4 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and he averages 160 yards a game. On top of that, he has 3 playoff games with 0 touchdowns, and he has 5 of the 6 with 1 interception or more. So again, I'm not excited because Jimmy Garoppolo isn't a playoff quarterback. So what do we have to look forward to? Was Trey going to light the world on fire? No, but he was going to develop, and you would get a better idea of what you have in him. And now you go into year 3 on a 5-year contract with no clue what you have in this quarterback. What are we doing?
Well, 4 and an option, right? But the assumption is that they would pick up the option.
Sure.
On your number 3 overall quarterback. So here's the thing, and I think that a lot of people are frustrated for a lot of reasons. And for me, like I can't give Kyle a free pass on this. Like I've seen a lot of people that are just giving him a free pass, saying, "Oh, it's a freak injury," and all this stuff. And Al, like you've very famously said that like nobody in the history of anything has gotten more free passes than Kyle Shanahan, right? Like you've said this like several times on our show, and it's just more of the same. And it's like, look, I don't want Kyle fired, right? Because the funny thing is like you'll make a comment criticizing Kyle, and all these people, some people are like, "Oh, well, you want him fired?" No, I don't want him fired. I want him to be better. Because if Kyle Shanahan is as smart as everybody says he is, then he can find ways to mitigate these sorts of things from happening. Like you can't eliminate injuries from football. It's a contact sport, right? The injuries happen all the time. But you can mitigate them by not running your quarterback into where all of the traffic is, where all the fat, heavy guys are. You don't run your quarterback into them. People say, "Oh, it's a simple read option." Read options run off tackle or near the tackle box. Like everybody compares Josh Allen. So I saw a number today on Twitter. SoCali Stephanie McCarroll actually put this out. And what she said was basically like, loosely quoting her, is that the percentage of time that Josh Allen ran between the tackles was significantly less than Trey. Trey was running about 25% of his design runs or whatever they were between the tackles. And that was like at least 5 to 7% more than what Josh Allen ran at his peak. So, and you're also talking about more opportunities to run the ball as well. Trey was averaging almost 13 carries a game. Like, he's a quarterback. He's not a running back. And on top of that, like, that's both. I understand that there's a difference between design runs and scrambling and off schedule plays, but that's really what it comes down to for me. It's like Trey needed to develop as a passer because he was he's a passer first and then a runner. And to me, all of this kind of seems so similar to what happened with RG3 in Washington, where Kyle saw something in RG3. He's like, all right, well, he's got a weakness. We're just going to hide that and just have him run the ball. And we're just not going to even worry about that. It's not how you develop a quarterback. Like, I have serious questions about whether Kyle can develop a quarterback now. Because it's like, when you have that opportunity, when you have your prized quarterback in front of you that you gave up 3 first-round picks for and is your future, and that you don't have a plan B for beyond this year, you need to bubble wrap that guy. And if he's inexperienced, I would much rather watch Trey throw 4 interceptions from the pocket than what happened yesterday, or even be exposed to those hits yesterday. And constantly, like, we talked about it after the Bears game, guys. Like, I said it after that as well. I'm like, I specifically referenced the hit that he took from Roquan Smith, where he landed on his shoulder, and I thought he was going to get hurt. And I said the same thing that you said, Al. This is not sustainable. So this is what actually pissed me off the most, that everybody saw this coming. Everybody's like, he's going to get hurt. And for some reason, Kyle Shanahan thought it was a good idea to heavily game plan Trey runs into his scheme. The worst part about this, guys, is that the run with the other running backs and Debo was working. In 2 drives, everybody not named Trey Lance had over 100 yards rushing already on 2 drives. And for some reason, Kyle's like, you know what? Let me let Trey run the ball. Let me let him run. And to me, people will criticize me like, well, you don't understand a read option. This, that. Look, to me, the way that I would have done it, and I'm some fan, I'm a nobody, right? But to me, the way that I would have done it is that, Trey, you got to earn your way to be able to run. You got to earn your way into those running plays. You got to be able to show me that you can pass the ball first, because that's your first responsibility, is to throw the ball on the team. And then if you can throw it, then we can start designing other stuff for you and just give you the other stuff. Like, it's such a bummer for me. Like, I can't tell you how terrible I feel, because Trey is going into his 3rd season. It'll be 36 months since his senior season in college. He will have played 18 quarters of football. And that, to me, is extremely scary for a team that is basically on the brink, hopefully, of a championship. And you literally don't know what your quarterback is your 3rd year in. So to me, like, I've got major beef with Kyle Shanahan over the usage, and not the play call. But the play call is fine. It's about the usage. You don't use your number 3 overall quarterback like a 7th round or undrafted free agent running back. You don't do that. And for all the people saying like, oh, they did it with Kaepernick, go back and watch his film. Go back and watch the film of that first game against Chicago, or the playoff game against Green Bay, which is when they fully unveiled the read option. Everything was off tackle. Everything was to the outside. Anytime he ran inside, they were either off schedule plays, or it was just like a simple QB draw, and it was like once or twice. So it's not the same thing as Cap. It's not the same thing as Josh Allen. And Kyle's answer was incredibly arrogant and stubborn in the press conference. Like, oh, well, the Bills do it with Josh Allen. Well, shit. The Chiefs throw it around the yard with Patrick Mahomes, and the Chargers throw it around the yard with Justin Herbert. Why don't you throw the ball 60 yards down the field like they do if you want to watch other teams? So to me, it's just like the lack of accountability, the lack of like admitting any sort of thing was wrong for Kyle, just par for the course for me. So yeah, I've got major beef with Kyle for that. I don't think he should be fired. I want him to be better. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the notion that you can't criticize from some people is a little bit crazy, right? Like, yeah, you don't want Kyle Shanahan fired. I think Kyle Shanahan's a good coach, but everybody has flaws, right? And I think stubbornness is his flaw. He kind of wants to do things his way. And Jimmy even alluded to it in his press conference when he said, hey, we were just kind of slinging it around like 2017, and that doesn't always happen around here. Because Kyle wants you. I saw somebody, I wish I remembered who said it, but it was a good analogy. Like, it's like you're playing Madden. Kyle wants you to hit the A button. Like, that's what you do on this play type thing. And he's very stubborn with that. And it is frustrating. And here's another thing too, like, everybody's different, right? Like, some players are super durable. Jerry Rice can tear his ACL and come back at the end of the season, and some guys aren't. Some guys get hurt all the time. Maybe Trey is going to be a non-durable dude. Like he hurt his finger, he hurt his knee. You know, maybe he's not a guy you can do this with. You know, maybe that's another way to look at it. But I will say that, you know, only time will tell with that. But I will say this, one thing that has really bothered me is the narrative surrounding him and almost the people rooting against him. In an article that came out about right after the kid, he's 22 years old, gets hurt. Oh, you know, unnamed people in the 49ers locker room think they're a better team. Really? That's what you're going to come out with? That
from Michael Silver.
Yeah, I'm not like whatever, like whoever, whatever. Just it disgusts me. Like the narrative, it's almost like people are like we're like relishing in this because it seemed like it was a takedown job last week, and then he gets hurt again this weekend. It's just like, are you kidding me? And look, I'm not somebody like, especially at this stage of like my life and career or whatever. I don't have favorite players. I'm not attached to any of that. I root for laundry, right? I'm not attached to really people. There's a few players that I kind of know personally that I'll root for, but other than that, I'm not. Jimmy, Trey, I don't know either one of them. You know what I mean? But so it's not like a Jimmy versus Trey thing. Like I think they'll probably win games with Jimmy now too. But just in terms of like just human interest, like what they did to this kid in the last week, and then to see him get hurt like that, it's just it sucks, man. It sucks for him. It's one of those things where you start to root for him because he was almost the underdog, right? And then this happens, and it's like, yeah, some people are relishing in it, and it's really unfortunate. It really is the divide in the Jimmy versus Trey thing and the way things have gone narrative wise. It's rough right now. It's really tough to stomach right now. Like I said, it's sort of tough to enjoy a dominating win because everything is just hard to stomach for me.
Well, and it really was, right? They absolutely blew the Seahawks out. Like the Seahawks didn't score an offensive touchdown. Like, you know, the narrative, right? Even after a loss last week should be focused really on the defense, right? The defense has given up the least number of yards in the NFL through 2 weeks. Granted, there's 2 games going on tonight, but I don't think either one of those defenses have that opportunity. But part of the problem is that, again, this was set up by the offseason, right? This was set up by the offseason by keeping Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, granted, it looks like a stroke of genius now, and I get that, right? There is no other team in the NFL better set up to lose their quarterback for the season than the 49ers because they have the guy that has been their starter for the last 5 years. But it has always felt to me like this. It's almost like, you know, you decide to get a divorce, but you live with each other still. And, you know, because that's what's comfortable and you do it for the kids or whatever, right? Like Kyle Shanahan has wanted a divorce from Jimmy Garoppolo since he overthrew Emmanuel Sanders in the Super Bowl in the 2019 season. Like he's actively tried to get rid of him. And now he's back. And what is going to be different? Like, what is going to be different about this offense? You saw it on Sunday. Jimmy Garoppolo came in, and what did the Seahawks start to do? They started to crowd the box and the middle of the field. The 49ers offense with Trey Lance under center had 145 yards in half of a quarter. And in the other 3.5 with Jimmy Garoppolo at the helm, they had 230. Why? Because defenses know how to defend Jimmy Garoppolo. They still won. He still put up points. I'm not debating that. But we're talking about the rest of the season, right? We're talking about what happens in the playoffs when you face the good defenses or the great defenses. And it really is a disgusting turn of events when people are taking victory laps on Twitter because Trey Lance got injured and now Jimmy Garoppolo, their guy, the guy they wanted, is going to be the quarterback for the rest of the season. Colin Cowherd, right, came out and his first comment was the 49ers are better now than they were before that game started. And it's just like, sorry, that's a scumbag move. Like you are a scumbag, right? And you can try and defend it all you want about talking about like the adults can handle this conversation. Everybody knows why you hate Trey Lance. Everybody knows. It's no secret. You can't play it off, right? And it's just really, really frustrating. And like you said, Zane, I just feel bad for the kid because ultimately, this is a 21-year-old kid who didn't trade 3 first-round picks for himself, who didn't choose to go to the 49ers, who didn't choose to be the heir apparent to a very popular player in the locker room and amongst the fan base, right? Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't popular with Kyle Shanahan because he couldn't get Kyle Shanahan where he wanted. Super popular with his teammates, and it's evident, right? Look at the way his teammates responded when he got to be on the field. And I'm not saying that they weren't behind Trey Lance, whatever the case may be. But by keeping Jimmy Garoppolo, you did not allow that locker room to just move on from Jimmy. You had him in the building still. And so they still had their guy there. And now all of a sudden their guy is getting an opportunity, even though it came because of injury. And they're like, hell yeah, let's ride, right? Let's go, Jimmy. Let's get behind Jimmy. They're, and it's just, this team is, like you said, Al, this team is going to win football games. They are. And that's great. Cool. Awesome. What does next year look like? What does the year after look like? You committed to the future by drafting this kid. And now, what is it? What does the future look like? What happens if Jimmy Garoppolo takes them to the NFC Championship game again? What happens if Jimmy Garoppolo gets them to the Super Bowl? What if they win the Super Bowl? Am I going to celebrate? You bet your ass I'm going to celebrate. But then my first question is, what next? What do we do now? Do we extend Jimmy Garoppolo? Do you look to trade Trey Lance? Like, it's messy now. And I'm so tired of it being messy. I want to be able to have a quarterback that I can believe in any given circumstance. That's all I want. That's all I want as a fan. And I cannot believe in Jimmy Garoppolo in certain circumstances. I cannot believe in Jimmy Garoppolo to come back. I cannot believe in Jimmy Garoppolo to stretch the field. I cannot believe in Jimmy Garoppolo in the playoffs. I wanted somebody that I could. And now I don't know. How do I feel about the season? I expect wins. I expect to see an excellent defense and an offense that may look great at times, but will likely look pretty bad at others. It's just, they won the game, but in my mind, it was a giant loss with Trey Lance. And I just feel bad for the kid, and I don't know what the future of my franchise holds now.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not at the point where I'm like, there's nothing to look for, because look, there's 15 weeks left in the year, and this is still a really good roster. This is the same roster essentially, minus a couple of offensive linemen that went to the championship game. And I'd argue that the defensive backs are probably better this year than they were last year.
This is going to be a fun season still. This is going to be a good season.
It'll still be a really good season. Yeah. Like the defense is actually a better unit this year than they were last year. And I wholeheartedly believe that.
Oh, so no doubt.
There's certain things to look forward to. I don't think it's all gloom and doom. I hear what you guys are saying, because, it's such a gut punch because we had a plan for Trey, right? There was a plan that us as fans, had for him to see him succeed. And obviously the team had for his progression, and it may not have resulted in a playoff berth this year, or a long playoff run this year, but it would have been a means to an end, which was much greater, right? Which is the quarterback for the next 10 years, hopefully, right? That's what we were hoping. And that's what I still hope for, right? Like, when he comes back, he's only going to be 23 years old. He's not going to have a lot of wear and tear on his body. So I think that, that he can still be a really, really good player. And that,
I was gonna say the one shining, or the one silver lining in terms of the injury, Tom Pelissero reported that it wasn't a compound fracture like Dak's ankle was. Mm-hmm. So obviously that's the good news there. So it does seem like the recovery might be quicker, and also more less long-term negative effects, but obviously we won't know that.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the things that I feared initially was Garrison Hurst when it first happened. That's what I feared, right? Where, if you guys remember when Hurst broke his ankle, there's a blood flow issue in recovery, and it actually took him almost 2 years to recover, and he just was never the same. But to hear that Tom Pelissero report earlier today, that kind of calmed some of my nerves, because it's knowing that Trey will get a full recovery, and hopefully, and he will be back hopefully better than normal. But the thing that I'm kind of worried about is this going to make him skittish in the pocket or skittish when he's running the ball, or what's it going to do to his confidence? Because
Hope it makes him slide.
yeah, I hope so too. I hope so too.
'Cause-
But I think that, like, guys, like there's a lot more to think about the season. Like I get it that we know what the ceiling is now, right? There isn't that like aura of mystery around this team that like, oh, like they could be really great and we don't know what that looks like, because we know what it looks like, right? Because we've seen it for the last almost 5 years now. So I understand that, but you know, all this reporting and all these things coming out in the media, like a lot of that's noise. A lot of that's just like, man, you know, we've heard certain things come out about both quarterbacks, about Trey, about Jimmy, and about this stuff. Like, it's like, for whatever reason, the media loves to create narratives and talk about stuff. And honestly speaking, so this is I'll play devil's advocate here, and then I'll give the other side as well. So there's a lot of talk about Trey Lance being captain amongst the fan base and all this stuff. There's a lot of talk about Trey, you know, being named one of the captains and he should get it and things like that. And the pushback on that from a lot of people was, well, he hasn't earned it, right? Like, he's just started 2 games. You know, you don't have, frankly speaking, the clout to be able to have that privilege bestowed upon you. And that's what his teammates thought, because they didn't vote him the captain, right? But to be fair, Debo was also not voted the captain either, right? So I think it's just more so like there's so many veteran leaders on this team and so many stars on this team that, like, how many can you pick? But to that point, I don't know what the context was. If those things were said about Trey, it's not a good look right after a guy has a season-ending injury, literally in front of his parents, whose parents are there, by the way, which is just horrifying for them to see. And I feel so terrible for them. But that's not a good look to put that stuff out literally the night of this guy's season ending, right? Like, that's not the time.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we don't know the context. We don't know the sources. They're unnamed sources. And we don't know what sort of stuff they were talking about, what sort of conversation took place. So it's like, to me, it's frustrating to hear that. I retweeted that Colin Cowherd thing. I'm like, bro, like, I know exactly why you have a bias against Trey. Like, you don't get to talk about Trey Lance. You just don't, because we know how you feel about him. We know why you feel about him that way. So to me, it's like, it was not journalism's finest hour when Trey got hurt and the subsequent hours after that. But I will say this: for a locker room, for any locker room, for anybody that's been like an athlete at like an amateur or college or professional, whatever level, a lot of that respect comes with time and repetitions and battles that you fight through. And I'm not making excuses for that reporting, but the concept of Trey not necessarily having like 100% support from some of his teammates, that's not, to me, totally, it's not an alien sort of thought. And the reason why is because he hasn't been through those battles with these guys. He hasn't had to overcome those things with these guys. He hasn't had to rehab with his teammates and things like that. And I'm not saying that's the only way that you gain support, but I'm saying that, like, okay, well, maybe that could be one of the things. Like, again, we don't know the context of that conversation. Now, that being said, what you said, Brian, is 100% correct. The team brought this on themselves. When you have a popular player and a guy who's been a captain for several years, and the guy that the team rallies around, and you bring him back into the locker room and you replace him with somebody else, what do you think is going to happen with the guy that you replace him with? Like, what did they think was going to happen? So they created this mess for themselves. And to me, like, that's what the worst part about all of this is that everybody saw this coming except for them. And it's great that Jimmy's there and that he's a capable starting quarterback in this league, and they're going to win hopefully a lot of games. But again, like, there's still a mess looming, because again, if they go on a deep playoff run and you're sitting at the end of the year and Jimmy's a free agent and Trey's rehabbing and all of his teammates just went either to the championship game again or won a Super Bowl or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden it's time for either you let Jimmy go or you re-up him, what are they going to do? It's the same crap song and dance again.
Yeah. And well, we got, you know what, we've talked about it for a half hour now. I think, and we will talk about it more. We got to move on. Like, let's talk about this game. Let's talk about where the season goes, because this is still going to be a good season. So before we do that, support for the No Huddle podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below the waist grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Over 6 million men worldwide trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you: 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code NOHUDDLE. At manscaped.com, if my math is correct, it's about 12 million balls. So go to manscaped.com, get 20% off free shipping with the code NOHUDDLE at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the code NOHUDDLE. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. All right, so moving forward now, because this happened, but I really felt in this game the Niners had a lot to prove coming out, because they handed a game away that they should have won last week. I said on our preview show that the defense needed to come out and step up. The defense needed to show that they were dominant and that they can carry the team, and that's exactly what they did. This game never felt in doubt, not for a second. And that's okay. It's the Seahawks. The Seahawks aren't good. Well, the Seahawks had the Niners number for a really long time. So even when the Seahawks are bad, the Niners still have issues with them. The Niners went out and really put a whooping on them. I think they could still be trying to score, and they may not score. The defense was so good. So to me, that was huge. That was a big statement for me. Nick Bosa, might be able to argue he's the best defensive player in the league right now. I think he means that much. And I think, the Niners aren't really, to me, built around the QB position. It's running and defense. So to me, Nick Bosa is like that integral part. Like, he's the guy on the field. He just changes everything to me. And he was dominant, and this defense was dominant. And this was a game, again, that you needed the Niners to see. They came out in an NFC that is wide open. I thought, even though it was against a bad team, I thought they made a bit of a statement with the way that they played.
I saw this earlier on Twitter, and I'm probably going to get the year wrong, but I'm pretty confident in it. This is the first time the 49ers have beat the Seattle Seahawks by 20 or more points since 1991. So, yeah, an absolute dominant performance against a team, like you said, Al, that has had this team's number. Mm-hmm. And we previewed this and we said, hey, the spread is 10. This is a division game against a team that has historically, at least recently, really, really given it to the 49ers, and they just absolutely wiped the floor with them, which is exactly what they needed to do, and it's exactly what they should have done against the Bears. And if there wasn't a monsoon, I'm pretty certain they would have. And so, yeah, I mean, the defense, we've said it all along. This team is going to be led by their defense and their run game, and they were, and they. They beat a team that had very little in terms of talent to compare to the 49ers, especially with Jamal Adams out, and really nothing. I mean, they have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, who are two good wideouts, but they still have Geno Smith under center, and it also kind of makes that Broncos loss to the Seahawks maybe even a little bit more embarrassing for the Broncos, who also didn't look very good against the Texans again this past weekend. So I'm actually, and we'll preview this game coming on Thursday, but even this game against the Broncos, which was circled as a game that might be a tough game, doesn't look as tough anymore, especially with that coaching staff in Denver seemingly not knowing what to do or how to coach football, because they haven't done a very good job of it. But the defense was awesome. That's the defense that I expected to show up in Chicago, and it's the defense that is going to be even better when Jimmy Ward gets back. And Talanoa Hufanga has been a revelation in these first two games. Yep. Dude has been absolutely incredible. And we talked about Jaquiski Tartt coming back to the squad, especially with the Ward injury. It seems like they knew what they were doing when they let him walk, because again, Hufanga has been an absolute revelation. And so that would be my pick for who to highlight. Al highlighted Nick Bosa, which is easy to do every week. But yeah, Talanoa Hufanga was really impressive against the Seahawks and against the Bears.
So quick note on Bosa. So via Jordan Elliott, Splash Cousin. What's up? Shout out to Splash Cousin if you're watching. But he just put out a stat that Nick Bosa had 7 pressures and 2 sacks in the game on Sunday against Seattle. So I just an absolute monster game. Again, he was really good against the Bears as well. And like, he's on pace for 20 something sacks, 24, 25 sacks at this point. So it's just a monster start for him, and just got to hope he stays healthy and that the defense can stay healthy and continue this. I think that, anytime you beat up on a division rival that's kind of given it to you in the past, psychologically, like that's still Pete Carroll over there, right? So, and it's still the Seattle Seahawks. And I think that for this team, psychologically, like whether that team is a talented team or not, they have to get over that hump to be able to kind of be able to assert themselves in the division. And I really feel like with this defense, like when defense travels, no matter where you go, right? No matter what the weather is, no matter where you go, defense travels and running game travels. So I think that there's a lot to look forward to with that. The defensive line is just dominant. Like they're not having to send extra blitzers to get pressure on the quarterback. We're getting pressure from the interior as well. Javon Kinlaw has looked amazing in his first 2 games, better than we've seen him look at any point in his career so far. And again, like the penalties were down. They had 1 penalty in the game, down from the 10 plus penalties they had in week 1. So I think that they cleaned up a lot of stuff. Hufanga is very quickly becoming my favorite player, maybe on the entire team. And it's just because the guy's everywhere, just an unbelievable athlete. His ball skills are fantastic. He had the tip interception to Sean Gibson, who also played really well too, and coming off the practice squad. So they're kind of hitting a stride here. And I know it's early on in the season, but like it's important for them to get that because, like you said, Jimmy Ward is out. And for me, the guy that I really kind of appreciate the most so far is Mooney Ward, and he's given up the lowest completion percentage out of any defensive back in the league since 2021. So I think that he had the big interception at the goal line where Seattle had that weird 4 running backs on the field trick play that they ran, and it was just an easy pick for him. I mean, he's been fantastic, and it's been a fantastic pickup. I was excited when they signed him, and yeah, Mooney Moore's just been lights out on that end. Emmanuel Mosley as well. So they went up against 2 Pro Bowl level players on Sunday, and yeah, Geno Smith's throwing it, but I mean, like DK Metcalf is a monster. And he had a very, very quiet game aside from basically like a couple catches. So I think that, this is the unit that will take them where they want to go.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing too, it is going to take them where they want to go. It is going to carry the team. I really believe that the defense is going to carry the team all year. And I think too, what you're starting to see is I really like that Debo and Ayuk led the team in targets. They're your playmakers. Get them the ball. We're going to have Kittle back, you would think, hopefully this week. And now there's issues. Ty Davis-Price has a high ankle sprain. He's going to be out. There's some issues in that running back room now, which is a little bit scary. Jeff Wilson, we love Jeff Wilson. He had a good game, 18 carries, I think it was 87 yards. And now we're going to find out about Jordan Mason, right? And Marlon Mack will get promoted too. So there's still guys who can run the ball, but there's a lot of playmakers on the team. The offensive line played really well in this game. With guys like Banks and Brendel, the guys we were worried about last week, they played well. It was a clean sheet, I think, pretty much for everybody. So it's really, really, really as frustrating as much of a gut punch as yesterday was. This is still a very good football team in the NFC.
Brendel had the butt snap though. Brendel had the butt snap in the rain.
Oh, right, you're right.
That was all. That was like the worst thing the offensive line did. Besides that, I mean, they were fine. They were great.
Yeah, if that's the only blip, I thought they played really well overall. But now I lost my train of thought, Zane. What was I going to say? I totally forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I wanted to talk about the offensive line there real quick.
I'll let you go. I'll try to remember what I was going to say.
Banks and Burford, Banks and Burford both had clean sheets yesterday. They were fantastic. And I think that, again, like, I know, Brian, that, like, you were saying you don't want to see this with Jimmy, but like with him at quarterback, it also changes how the offensive line plays as well, too, right? Because he has a quicker release. They don't have to block for as long. So it's gonna look different than it did with Trey. And I think that we'll see how the offensive line adjust to a different quarterback now. And again, Kittle is another guy that they have to adjust to when he's back in there as well, and use whether they want to use him as a blocker or a receiving option. We'll see. But yeah, like I think the offensive line play was much, much improved from week 1. The problems that they had in the preseason, like they look like a completely different unit, and that's really encouraging to see.
I'm just excited to see them play a better quality opponent, right? We know the Bears aren't going to be good. We know the Seahawks aren't going to be good. Roster talent wise, very, very little there to get excited about. Their first real test comes next week, and the Broncos haven't been playing well, but they've got the roster talent to be better than they are. And so I'm excited to see that. The Broncos have better edge talent on the defensive line than the Seahawks do. So it'll be interesting to see where, how that tests will Trent and McGlinchey, right? Because in Chicago, the issue wasn't the interior of the offensive line, which is shocking to say, but it was the majority of the pressure that the Bears got was off the edge. against Williams and against McGlinchey. And so I'm excited to see them, play with more, with more talent, right? Play against teams with better talent. And it's coming back to back, right? We've got Broncos next week. We got Rams the following week, right? That's that's a good stretch. And I think we'll learn a lot more about the team than we did these first 2 weeks. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah. So I remember what I was going to say. So we're talking about the NFC, right? So when you look at this NFC right now, to me, it is wide freaking open. So the Rams are the Super Bowl champions, but we know the Niners can beat the Rams. It's not an issue. They should have beat the Rams
looked good.
Championship game. Yeah, they really haven't looked good. There's definitely issues there. The Bucs defense looks very good. Offensively, they've been definitely out of sync. When they get it going, they can be very good, but I don't think, with the Niners D, again, they can keep that low scoring game. Dallas, I'm not afraid of. The Niners have had Green Bay's number. The list kind of goes on and on. I don't think New Orleans has the quarterback play. We'll see as the season goes on. Minnesota look good, but again, the Niners defensive line, can they, stymie Kirk Cousins? Probably. So this NFC is wide open, and the Niners are not built around the quarterback. So it's not like we're going into the season with Nate Sutfeld. This can still be a very good season. So am I pissed about what happened? Yeah. Do I like the way things have been handled? I do not at all. I think it's been dysfunction junction, to be honest with you. But here we are. And is this still a good football team? Yes. Can this team still go to the Super Bowl? Yeah. I mean, if they were in the AFC, I'd be like, probably not. There's some buzzsaws in the AFC, but in the NFC, yeah, I think they can still get there. So it's, as frustrating as it is, I'm still optimistic for the rest of the season.
Well, and I would argue that as frustrated as I am and sad as I am, because I really was excited to see this kid develop this year. You know what I'm most excited about? The narratives are gone. The narratives are gone. We don't, Al, you and I spent 20, 25 minutes talking about the Trey Lance narrative after week 1 and how ridiculous it was. We don't have to worry about that anymore. It's gone, right? It's Jimmy Garoppolo for 2022. We don't even have to think about Trey Lance this season. So I'm excited for that. And like you said, to me, the team that has looked best, now they play the Eagles tonight, right? And so we'll see how things go, because the Eagles looked pretty good as well until the Lions, who apparently are an offensive juggernaut, almost came back on the Eagles. But the NFC is not strong. It's not. The Packers haven't looked great. The Vikings looked good. I think they could be a dark horse threat. The Eagles looked good. Their defense might not be as good as we thought, or at least maybe their defensive play caller isn't. Like you said, Tampa Bay's offense is disjointed right now. Their defense looks really good, and that's not a defense. We will see that defense a little bit later this season. I'm a little bit worried about what that defense can do to this offense, this Jimmy Garoppolo-led offense. But I have no doubts that this 49ers team is going to make the playoffs. I have zero doubts about that. I thought they were going to make it with Trey, right? Being, learning on the fly. So like I said, I will be excited for the wins. The wins are coming, and I'm excited about that. And I'll be excited for a playoff run. But in the back of my mind, I just keep thinking, like, what is the ceiling for this team? Is this a Super Bowl team? Is this a Super Bowl winning team? Can this team win against another team with Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback, or Josh Allen at quarterback, or, I don't know. I have no idea, but we'll see. That's the beauty of football, right?
I'll be honest with you. So I wasn't in on the season preview show, but I'll be honest with you. I actually didn't have to make the playoffs this year with Trey. I didn't, because, and this is why. People will kill me for it, but this is why. Because this year was all about Trey's development, right? It was not necessarily about like, oh, we're going to win the Super Bowl this year and be back in the NFC Championship. I thought that, in my opinion, the most important thing to do this year was to get, like you said, Brian, those reps for Trey. And that may mean like you have some poor play and you have some stretches of poor play because he's learning. And to me, like, next year would have been that year where you're really contending with Trey, where he's making that big leap and he's a much more polished player. But I think that, again, we know what the ceiling is with this team. That they're probably a playoff contending team. And Al, to your point, like, yeah, there's no team in the NFC that really scares me at this point, especially when the Niners are playing like this on defense. Minnesota. So it's a funny thing. Like, we're talking about what's going to happen after this year. I can see Kyle doing something crazy like making a play for Kirk Cousins next year. I can totally see him doing that. And I don't want him to do that because that's literally a really expensive, slightly better version of Jimmy Garoppolo. And I don't want that. You want a big upgrade. You want a guy that's going to enable you to take you to the next level, right? Which I think Trey can be. So anyways, we'll see, guys, man. This is going to be an interesting season. All of a sudden, it becomes a super intriguing season for reasons that we didn't want. But here we are. And I will say that having Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster, it has been a distraction, but I'm a hell of a lot more comfortable with him than I would have been with Brock Purdy taking over. Like this is what we have now, guys. Like there is no other solution on the horizon. It's Jimmy Garoppolo the rest of the way. So buckle up. It's going to be all right.
Yeah, definitely. But I'll tell you what, we'll be back here later in the week. We'll talk about this huge game with Denver. Huge. Russell Wilson. It's a gigantic game for the Niners. It's going to show us a lot. It's going to tell us a lot this week about this team going to Denver, the Sunday night game. So we'll talk about that later in the week. It's still going to be an exciting season. We're still pumped up. Obviously, you got to decompress and talk about, because it was a big gut punch what happened. And, we did that. And I think we had our 30-minute therapy session. And now, I think we're ready to move forward. So
I feel better.
Yeah. Me too.
Get well soon, Trey.
Absolutely. All right. For Brian and Zane, this is Al.
Peace.
Go.